Hello and welcome. It's another fantastic Friday here. I'm Matthew Woodget from Go Narrative, and every Friday I pick a company and tear down their homepage so that you can see where exactly their story breaks. Today we've got Rhythms. The team built Ally.io, ALLY.io, and led Viva Goals at Microsoft. 26 million in funding raised in about 2023. Excel, Greenotes, Madrona, their founder literally wrote the book on OKRs, and Satya Nadella blurbed it. So I'm excited for this one today, and I hope you are too. When we look at their homepage, we're going to hear that OKRs solve 10% of the problem. What problem, you ask? Well, we'll see when we get to the webpage. But the problem relates to running one's business and OKRs being 10% of that solution, if you will. So here's what I'm looking for when I go to the webpage. At least one of the things. If OKRs solve 10% of the problem, what about the other 90%? And what is it about the page that says or doesn't say about that 90%? Okay, so I'm going to keep an eye out for that. That's specific to today. And of course, if you've joined any number of our streams before, you'll also know we're always looking for things like, who are we talking to? Who are we connecting with to make their day, their life, their career better? And of course, why this company? Why now? We'll keep an eye out for those as well. Let's go ahead and dive right in. We're going to pull the web page up. Here we go. The AI native way to run a business and scale it without limits. That's pretty good to me. We hear a lot of AI nowadays, but without limits, that's a big, bold claim right there, smack bang at the top of the page. Then somewhere around the middle, as we scroll down, it looks like they're getting a bit nervous, adding a safety net. That old category starts to find its way in. That familiar comparison, the thing that buyers have already searched for. Now the page starts arguing itself. So here we've got the AI-powered operating system. What else have we got on the page? Radar, reviews, and runs your operations. Your organization has no ceiling. What changes? 2 decades in the space, and this is where we start to see that internal conflict. A page that is arguing with itself loses the argument for you as the company, as a web page. But today we're looking at a company with a really sharp vision of this problem, and a better vision than most, because the safety net isn't some generic category. It's their own past. They literally built the old thing. They were the best in the world at the old thing. And the old thing won't let go. That, my friends, that is what I like to call decision leak. The page has made a positioning bet and then quietly takes it back. Every lie, every individual sentence is defensible on this webpage. Every one, but the bet doesn't hold under pressure. The top of the page says one thing. The bottom of the page believes another thing. And your buyer can feel that disagreement. They can feel that tension, even if they can't name it. If OKRs solve 10% of the problem, why won't this page say what solves the other 90%? Here's the headline: the AI native way to run a business and scale it without limits. Let's read that again. Run a business. What? Doing what? That could be ERP. It could be CRM. Heck, we're talking about AI. It could be an agentic platform. A fractional COO in a box. Without limits isn't a claim, it's a wish. This is what you write when you're fleeing a category and you haven't picked the next one. You don't say what you are when you do that. You say something so big it can't be wrong, which unfortunately means it's probably not going to get repeated either. Now, if we continue to scroll down to the FAQ, keep scrolling, still scrolling, scroll. And here we've got the FAQ. Question 4. How is Rhythms different from other OKR tools? One word in that sentence undoes everything. And the problem isn't just that it's in this one sentence. It's that this sentence exists because of how the company is talking about itself, how it's creating copy for its web pages, how it's approving that copy for its web pages. Likely, that copy will be indexed, sales enablement materials, and even finding its way into recruitment conversations. That one word that undoes it all: other. Other OKR tools. Their own page. Just filed them back in the category their own story section demoted to 10% of the problem. Make sense? Are you seeing what I'm laying down? Company says OKR tools only solve 10% of the problem, implying that they do the other 90%. With a subtext of, we know what we're talking about because we created the best OKR tools. And then here we are in the FAQ section on the page, and we say, how is this thing that we're looking at different from other things like this? Straight back into that category, straight back into that 10%. The hero flees the category and the fact moves back in on the same page. This is like very zeitgeist because of today's IPO, SpaceX. This is a rocket still bolted to the launch pad, to the launch tower. The OKR category is the tower that got them funded, is where their expertise from. They've built on that. They're ready to go to the stars. Gets the search traffic. Gets the Satya Nadella quote. The tower built it for them. You can't claim to get to orbit while you're still bolted to the pad. You know, with SpaceX going public this morning, biggest IPO in history, you know what they did before the rocket left. They let go of the tower. That is the whole trick. Where do we find ourselves now? We find ourselves thinking about what could the fix be? What could it be, perhaps, if we jump back up to the top? Could it be perhaps a new headline? No, the fix is not a new headline. It's a decision about where the hedge lives. The homepage carries that bet. The hedge gets its own page. The migration play is real money. Okay, totally valid channel. I get it. Viva Gold's refugees, you are welcome. OKR search traffic, we gotcha. Boom. You can do a campaign landing page. Take it. Awesome. Fantastic. But that play belongs on the landing pages built for that. And you know what? They already have one. The homepage only has one job. One job. Say what the 90% is. Lay down that belief, make that promise, and then reinforce it, and then reinforce it, and then reinforce it, and then reinforce it, and then reinforce it. Right now, the homepage is trying to win the new category and keep a hold of the old one. Pages that try to do both do neither. And unfortunately, this is what safety nets get us. And this is what safety nets cost. Every visitor who feels the page arguing with itself walks away unsure of what these people actually believe. But worse yet, just like I said, the homepage is one expression of this opinion. If it's made it onto the homepage, I guarantee you, this is how the conversation is going with investors. This is how the conversation is going with prospects. This is how the conversation is going at events, keynotes, breakout sessions. These are tendrils of inertia that reach up and pull us down. They are the bolts that attach our rocket to the launch pad. Let's see, how about two diagnostic questions? I'm going to surface and help us see the next click down of what's going on here. Question number one. What's the category that you're trying? What is the category that you're trying to leave? What is it? And how much of your proof still lives there? Think about that for rhythms. Think about it for yourself. I'll say it again. What's the category that you're trying to leave? And how much of your proof still lives there? Resonating? Locked and loaded? All good? I shall say my next question. Question number 2. If a stranger read only your headline, stranger read only Rhythm's headline, just that one line, could they tell you what you do back to you? Or have you written something so big it says nothing? Again, think about this in terms of rhythms. Maybe think about it in terms of your own business. What is that first sentence on your website? If a stranger read only the headline, just that one part, could they tell you what you do back to you? Or is it something that's off in the clouds? We opened with a page, website that argues with itself, didn't we? Here's the thing about rhythms. This team has earned the right to make a big bet. They built this category. They sold it to Microsoft. Some of them came from Microsoft. They wrote the book. This is some pretty awesome IP and knowledge that they're standing on, that they've built. Fantastic stuff. And their own homepage says that the thing they built solves 10% of the problem. And it does, because if you don't say what the 90% is, that's all you've done. And if you say other OKR tools, you're tying back to that. If you're trying to break away, if you're trying to say OKRs only solve 10%, you need to have a counterpoint. That is your why. That is your what it is that you do that makes people's lives better and why they should care. It's connected to the thing that wakes them up in the middle of the night or gets them out of bed at 5 in the morning. That's what you're connecting to. So if OKRs solve 10% of the problem, why won't this page say what solves the other 90? Because that's what they're promising. Because letting go of the tower is the hardest part of the launch. Actually, the most dangerous part of the launch. If I understand correctly. Even when, and especially when, you built the tower. So if you see this in your company, your old win is still anchoring you to your new story. Anchoring you to your old story, and it's stopping your new story from breaking free. Seeing this, please book a narrative diagnostic. Go up to gonarrative.com. Book a narrative diagnostic, and we will find where your bet might be leaking and what it's costing you. Gonarrative.com, top right, book to chat with us. Exactly what we do. If you have any questions in the meantime, shoot us an email, gnhelp@gonarrative.com. As you've seen today, this can be quite common. So if you're experiencing this on your website, you're not alone. The good news is there's a way forward. What I want you to think about is I want you to think about what this is costing you. What is it costing you to be tied to the old way? What is it costing you? You've made a decision for this new thing, and that decision is leaking from you to your team, to your web, your homepage. What happens when you hire your VP of sales? That decision is leaking. It's going to keep leaking. Because that VP of sales hire get hired under the wrong precepts? Are they hired as a part of that anchoring to the old way of doing things, that anchoring to the launch pad? In this case, you now have a VP of sales who's thinking OKRs, that their headspace is in that 10%. Because if the decision is leaked about the 90% and they're not empowered, they don't have anything to work with. And every company doing AI right now is fighting against not just the noise of AI in the background, but they're also fighting with skepticism of AI. And if you're claiming anything, such as running your business and the sky being the limit, you have to have a point of view, and it needs to be clear. Let's see what questions we've got, shall we? Go ahead and pull up the Q&A. Vacate lines. Wow, those are great questions here. Let's start with this one. This is a nice segue from what we were just talking about, and it helps really illustrate the point. Is decision leak the most common thing you see, Matthew? Most common in companies that have won something. There's a reason to stay attached to something old, have that kind of inertia. In companies with no history, or started with no history, the leak isn't primed per se. The decision leak can still happen if your vision, mission, purpose, and reason for existence and reason for helping people is clear and defined, then the leak is going to be harder. So as a founder, if you find yourself consistently repeating or redoing how you're talking about that, call it packet or collection of core insights or pillars of what makes a business tick and what makes an innovation, births an innovation into existence, that keeps changing, then that is going to leak as it hits your team. Now that's actually more of a, what I would call a legibility problem. You haven't got it dialed in, and they're not mutually exclusive. So when I look at the Rhythms homepage, pull that back up, and I see AI native way to run a business and scale it without limits, I have questions. And we talked about those earlier on. Is this a COO in a box? Is this a kit of agents? Is this CRM? Is it ERP? It's unmoored. So there's a legible, clear, yes, but is it specific enough to connect about why the business exists and whose morning is going to be made better because of it existing? I'm not getting that from this. So startups who have something new, it can be easier to avoid decision leak. But as I've just articulated, it can still manifest. So the quick answer to the question is, it's not the most common thing, but it is definitely one of the key things. Decision leak, delegation tax, and legibility loss, those are the key breakdowns that I see happening. And as a little bit of a preview, we're building a tool. Actually got the draft. We built it yesterday. Working with Claude, Fable. We're refining the logic today. And you will be able to take that and identify where in your business there could be one of these vectors of anti-clarity, if you will. Clarity shouldn't require proximity, but it often starts with proximity. And once you move beyond that, the founder not being able to be in close proximity to the whole team, that's when these things really start to show up. You can spot them early. You can work on that beforehand. But if you're like most companies, you'll start to handle things when they start to become a problem. And they do start to become a problem. Unfortunately, folks don't always see it, and they will invest in hustle. I've got no problem with hustle, but I'm all about hustle that compounds, not hustle that compensates. As long as those efforts and those energies that you're putting into the business are building on the previous efforts and energies, fantastic. If you're relitigating, that is not a good use of your time. It's going to slow everything down like molasses, and that is going to hurt the business, just like not developing the product fast enough, having bad customer support or customer success, or bad sales approach, or poor positioning. All of these are core to a company be able to operate. This is one of the stealth ones. Okay, another question. How do I know if my page has this problem? Read your headline out loud. Read it out loud. Then read your frequently asked questions if you have them. If you don't, then look at the rest of the content of the page. The answers to what you're anticipating, the answers that you're putting out there to what you're anticipating in terms of questions, whether it's an explicit fact, and you've done the due diligence and you've integrated it into the webpage, either or, totally fine. Decision leak is when your top and your bottom disagree, and you've stopped noticing that. So that's why you read it out loud, have a look as an explicit way of going and looking for that. Often the team can't see it because they were in the meetings, but a stranger can see it in seconds. That's why book a narrative diagnostic. By the time you do that, you will be one of the first people that gets to do the narrative, actually the book a narrative assessment. You'll be one of the first people that gets to do the narrative diagnostic, and combine that with us looking at your webpage, doing this type of teardown. We will help you surface that really quickly, and then you can decide how you can move forward doing something about it. Okay, time for one more. We're at the bottom of the hour. What should the headline say? What should the headline say? I'm not rewriting it on air. Let's do this one. Isn't a vague headline just every B2B homepage? Why pick on these guys? Fair enough. Vague is everywhere, but this isn't vague by accident. This is vague because they made a decision, and that decision was then unmade. In their own story section, remember, they say OKRs are 10% of the problem. They're laying down that context. That's a real bet. More power to you. The vagueness up top is that the cost of not finishing the bet. That's the cost, the initial cost, and then you pay the cost of that being what you say. Not finishing the bet, not having the answer, the 90%, not having the answer to the why, ultimately. That is conflicted. So generic pages are lazy. This isn't lazy, it's conflicted. That's a different problem. And that, my friends, should be nice and clear now that we've walked through that today. thank you so much. We'll be skipping next week, but we'll see you the week after for another homepage teardown. Thank you for stopping by. Thanks for sticking around for the Q&A. And don't forget, you can send an email to us or pop over to gonarrative.com. My name is Matthew Woodget from Go Narrative, and thank you so much for spending a bit until Friday with us. See you soon.